Mr. Incredible in the comics. The continuity for him is a bit interesting and confusing at the same time because there seems to be similarities to the movies with him being fat, out of shape, looking at his glory days. I mean, the comics even show flashbacks back in the day. I mean, this comic is literally called Midlife Crisis, so they're literally flashing back to his younger days, similar to the movies. And you can kind of tell by his room, the way it's set up, the pictures on the wall, you can tell like it's all about them old days, similar to the movies, the jar, key to the city, blah, blah, blah. But the comics also acknowledge events that we've seen in the movies, and even there are certain threats they had to take on, like Syndrome, which is a movie character. You know, Syndrome from the movie. The comics kind of reference him, and the fact that this girl right here is his assistant. And you remember how Mirage helped Mr. Incredible escape? Mr. Incredible was showing his gratitude to her, and Miss Incredible kind of doesn't like her because of that hug. AKA Elastigirl doesn't like her because of this hug. The comics kind of reference these events. She kind of be smacking her for no reason and stuff, just because she can, showing that continuity stuff did happen in this comic universe. So a lot of the same stuff that we saw in the movies kind of apply for the comics, plus with extra comic stuff, if you don't want to count them one and the same. They even show some stuff that we don't see in the movies, like Elastigirl being pregnant with Jack and stuff. And apparently the video game events, Rise of the Underminer, the video game, is a part of this comic book continuity. But anyway, let's analyze this Mr. Incredible. It's a lot of the same stuff we're used to. He has ridiculous super strength and invulnerability. Those are his two main things. Like, everything is strong about him. Even his lungs, he can hold his breath for a ridiculously long time. Just like the movies, he can lift a car, of course. That's why he's effortlessly able to lift cabinets, rip doors and wires off the hinges with no effort. Construction equipment he can rip apart. He was training with his kids. He threw this big pile of hay. This pillar that helps hold up a building, he was helped keeping it stable. Wrecking balls he can lift, despite them being dang near the same size as him. He's so strong, even things that are technically larger than himself, he can overpower them biting on him. Here's an example of something else. This big rock he's lifting above his head. I did my own calculations. I assumed this rock was 10 feet. This approximately should be at least 15 tons. This kind of stuff doesn't seem to be nowhere near his max. These huge branches he can rip out and overpower just by running. Notice how he just literally ripped into this big robot and made his own entrance. He has the raw strength to uproot trees. Based on Syndrome analyzing him, I don't think this is his max or nothing, but we got a bare minimum of that he should be able to at least lift 55 tons. Based on the stuff I've showed you him do, this shouldn't be really a contradiction or nothing. I mean, when you see him lift up stuff like this, do you really doubt he can lift 55 tons, honestly? Train wagons can vary in weight, and he's doing reps for workouts, implying this is not his heaviest he can do, because these things can weigh 20 to 40 or even more tons. I mean, he sprints with this as weights. You can Google this yourself. Google what the weight of train tankers are. He's literally working out with this with his legs, stuff that can weigh 40, even up to close to 100 tons. So I'm pretty sure Syndrome was accurate, or this could be underselling him, honestly. I mean, he's bench pressing this that could weigh over 40 or even 50 tons. It seems like Syndrome might have not knew his full potential because, you know, just like the movies, if the movie's events happen in the same comic continuity, this big old Omni droid, some have calculated fan calculations to be over thousands of tons and stuff, but regardless of how you look at it, I think we all can agree this is definitely over 55 tons. Might I add, this was like the biggest Omni droid, might I add, that Mr. Incredible's daughter could not withstand the weight of this thing. Her shield couldn't handle it, but Mr. Incredible has the raw strength to support this kind of weight, something that should be at least 1,000 tons. I totally think it's fair to say Mr. Incredible can at least lift 1,000 tons. Not to mention Mr. Incredible probably can punch with this kind of force too, implying he could probably physically, with raw punching power, just punch through his own daughter's force field. I mean, honestly, the comics implied he could punch through his own daughter's force field when she trapped him. They was having like a training session, and the weight of his hits was giving her a headache. And he was taking it easy on his daughter, so it lets you know that he has the raw strength to probably bust through it or at least make her release it. If the comic Violet is anything like our movie self, remember that Violet was able to shield from something like this, something strong enough to blow away the house behind them. So Mr. Incredible, with this stuff I've already showed you, him being able to lift 1,000 tons, him being able to punch with similar force, yeah, he could easily punch down buildings. Blowing away a house with his punching power shouldn't be a problem, honestly. The same super heavy Omni droid that probably weighs over 1,000 tons that crushed Violet's force field, he proved that he pretty much can punch through her force field or make her release it with his punching power, you could say. Obviously, this is a weaker Omni droid, but he can punch with that much weight to send it flying that far. And the even bigger Omni droid, he can truck stick it and make it fall over with the weight of his charge. So if you had any doubts about the weight of his striking power, he can move 1,000-ton stuff with trucking his shoulder. Might I add that he's not in his prime when he's older because of age, so anything you see him do in this red outfit, just know his blue outfit self can do better. But even if he's not in his prime, the weight of his hits are still heavy enough to easily knock out and solo a lot of different beings. When you're so strong, even if you're not in your prime, some stuff is just never going to be tough for you no matter how weak you get. I mean, there's even time where we see him solo while having a conversation. We've seen him fight super beings that are literal gorilla-like and beat them off screen. And yeah, more than once because of the weight of his hits. He even did it in his younger days. And like all of y'all just get soloed by himself. But if you're one of those people saying he's not that strong, he can't lift 1,000 tons, he can't punch with 1,000 tons of force, that's just an over-exaggeration. That Omnidroid doesn't have an official weight. Well, what about some things that do have an official weight? If you don't want to use this as why he can hit with thousands of tons of force. There's super beings in this universe that can do this to bank vault doors with their bare hands. Mr. Incredible can match these beings that can rip off bank vault doors with their raw strength. They're literally clashing muscle. This is something we've seen him doing in the movies. You already seen the movie feat. Well, I'm going to show you the comic book feat. Look at all these trains. He had to literally stop. Not to mention his durability had to withstand this. So his durability matches up with his, strength. We see him literally stop all these freaking trains with his muscle. I shouldn't have to show this, but yeah, just a friendly reminder, whatever he can lift, his punches are similar. Look what he does when his punches. His punches aren't just magically weak. This whole idea of lifting strength doesn't equal striking power is kind of silly to me. Like, why do you think Mr. Incredible can punch hard? Because of skill? No, he don't punch hard because of skill. He punches hard because he has super strength. He can lift a lot of weight, so therefore he can hit with a lot of weight. That's why he makes walls look like butter, busting through plenty in the comics. Hitting down doors, Underminer bots, solos them, punches holes through them, super reinforced doors that are made of the strongest. Mr. Incredible punches can get through it. Look how large these super mechs are. The weight of Mr. Incredible's hit on the ground can make it jump in the air, making a shockwave. Clashing with this being, there's implications. The weight of his punch did this to the concrete, that he made like a shockwave earthquake in the immediate vicinity, and look what his head does to trucks. So earlier when I brought up the Omnidroid being 1,000 tons, if you somehow don't want to count that or whatever, in the comics, Mr. Incredible has a feat that pretty much forces you to believe he can lift over 1,000 tons. It's this submarine feat. They literally called it the Swordfish-class nuclear submarine. Swordfish-class nuclear submarines are actually something that exists in real life that have official weights. Bare minimally, they can weigh 1,000 freaking tons. Guess what? Mr. Incredible, younger days, we see him support this weight. They call it one of his most impressive strength feats ever. This is almost similar to him holding the Omnidroid in weight. Yeah, guys, let's just accept the fact he can lift over 1,000 tons. He even did it again when he was older and not in his prime when it comes to a submarine. That was a meager 3 tons lesser, but he did say it felt like it was heavier, so this does imply he's weaker, but he's still strong enough to hold it. Did you all have any doubts about this based on him striking that Omnidroid and moving it with the weight of his hits? I mean, really? I mean, there's a reason why Syndrome had to send like the strongest of the strongest Omnidroids to him. It's a reason why Mr. Incredible's threat level is so ridiculously high compared to every other super we've seen in the movie. And some of these supers are ridiculously powerful. I mean, just look at Hypershot. Look at his threat level, lower than Mr. Incredible's. But he can make seismic waves with his blast power. His raw power output doesn't even beat Mr. Incredible's. Somebody that can make 6.0 earthquakes on the Richter scale can't overpower Incredible with their raw power output. Not to mention weaker Omnidroids took him out. Mr. Incredible fought Omnidroids on a completely different level. And one of the rare people to actually break an Omnidroid with his raw strength. What I'm saying is basically him punching you would feel like an 1,000-ton rock falling on your face. If you want to assume Mr. Incredible can punch harder than he can blast, 6.0 Richter on the scale would be a bare minimum of 10,000 of raw tons of raw force. And Mr. Incredible's apparently above that. That would imply Mr. Incredible's punches would be harder than what this guy can blast. That would not only imply Mr. Incredible can punch with 1,000 tons of force, but punch with even over 10,000 tons of force if you want to take that seriously about him being above him, the guy that can make earthquakes on the 6.0 on the Richter scale. I mean, when you sit down and think for a second, there's literally earthquakes that can shake multiple buildings or a whole block. You know how one building can weigh over 500,000 of tons, and if he can really produce seismic activity with his fist alone, that would imply Mr. Incredible can hit with like even millions of tons of force if we want to take that seriously. About him being above certain beings like Hypershock. I mean, look at the stuff the Incredibles have to face in the comic lore, for example. Like, look how small everybody looks in comparison to this big dragon. And we see Mr. Incredible hit these beings this big. Usually when he hits beings, they go flying. And what if I told you Mr. Incredible got a temporary power-up? Along with the rest of the family, like, I don't know how strong he got during this temporary power-up. But there's implications he was so many times above what he usually will be, and I've already showed you what the stuff he can do already. So if you want to take that junk serious about him being able to hit with 15,000 tons of force, he can do more than 15,000 tons of force here, doing way more damage to this creature. The whole team working together to make this being drowsy. But yeah, this was temporary. Yeah, it thwarted the virus that, buffed him for a little while. But he doesn't need this stuff to be a beast. And he's one of those characters to where he is a brute juggernaut of the universe. He doesn't want to rely on just raw strength all the time. We see him have decent reflexes reacting to certain things like this laser, for example. It's even talked about here. Back in his days during his training sessions, he had to push himself out of his comfort zone. All of this could be just me, but yeah, he's way stronger than what you originally thought. He could probably make his own localized earthquake that stretches a few blocks, similar to scans like this, how he can make shockwaves and make his own localized earthquake. Like here, and how he launched this being in the air with a foot stomp earthquake. You see what I mean? But I gotta say real quick, like, share, subscribe. Thanks for the donations, guys. Mr. Incredible from the comics is pretty strong. I'm glad you are enjoying your time on the channel. Make sure you check out the playlist on the channel to see other How Strong videos. If you like what this channel is offering, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys later.